Start. Okay. Basically, I think what we'll just do here is we'll do the basic intro into who you are and such, why you're the person to talk to,
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff, and then just kind of probably go through the points like I had written in the email there as they come up. And feel free to rabbit trail or just be very casual
Sounds good.
about it. So, and we'll go ahead and start. I'm going to close that just so I can see my notes. Cool. All right. Let me just double check something here. Okay. All right. Welcome to the Dune Saga podcast. I'm David Moulton. Joining me on this special episode of Let's Talk Dune is Jesse DeStasio, and we're going to be talking about the Dune toys. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hello, everybody out there in podcast world.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Before we get really into the meat and potatoes here, would you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and maybe your history in toys?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm currently one of the co-creators and co-hosts of Toy Pizza on YouTube, which is a co-production with Frederator Studios, and we do about 2 videos a week and cover all things collectibles. But normally we're focused on action figures and things like that. Dune is a popular topic for myself. For my co-host, less so, but I try to sneak it in there whenever I can. I also, for the day job, I run Eerie Theory Entertainment, which is a boutique licensing agency. So I deal with a lot of intellectual property rights, making publication deals, making toy deals, merchandise deals, and Dune is something that's always fascinated me from a licensing standpoint as well, and it's sort of one of those great properties I would love to get my hands on and do something with.
Now, have toys always been a super passion of yours?
Yeah, from a very young age. I was always sort of customizing them and cutting them up and repainting them, and I was lucky enough to get a job as a unpaid intern at a toy company while I was still in college, and just kind of rode the wave from there.
Wow. Very, very cool. I have to say, in regards to Toy Pizza, I can't remember the last time I went on a toy hunt,
Hmm.
but I watched the Mario episode, and
Ah,
I saw that Bowser, and I was like, I want that.
yeah.
Started driving around to the different stores, see if they had it. I haven't found it yet, but at some point.
Well, they're out there. That's the World of Nintendo line by Jakks Pacific.
Mm.
Yeah, Mario treats us very well. There's a huge audience out there on YouTube for Mario, and I would say second only to Power Rangers, which is probably, we do anything Power Rangers, we get X amount of views like clockwork.
Wow, wow. Well, let's talk about your interest in Dune. Are you interested in the books and the movie, or just strictly the toys?
I'm a very late in life Dune reader.
Okay.
Dune had a impact on me as a kid as well. My grandmother, they used to have picture books for every movie, regardless if it was rated R or not. And my grandmother was a bit senile, and she bought me Dune and Blade Runner picture books. And I was probably 5 years old, I would say. So not sort of the type of visuals you necessarily want to expose a young child to. But I was obsessed with Star Wars, and she sort of either thought that was a part of Star Wars or, sort of kind of fit that mold. So she bought them for me, and I just remember looking at that Dune storybook and really being warped. Really
Yeah.
just not understanding the grotesqueness of David Lynch's vision, and why these characters weren't sort of the very clear-cut archetypes that Han and Luke and Darth Vader were.
Right. It's a very gruesome reality that he painted with that movie. And, it even just surprises me that they made toys of it. Like
Yeah.
some of the characters are just blatantly disgusting.
Yeah. I think though, look, the Lynch film has its detractors. I actually love the Lynch film, however imperfect they may be. And I actually think like the brutality of the book is there in the Lynch film. Like the books there are horrific things that happen. From when Paul sort of transitions into the Emperor, he is wiping out millions of people.
Right.
And does so and mentions it very casually. So it's I understand people's criticism of the film. Certainly, I totally get that. But I think actually it matches, and it kind of extrapolated a lot of stuff better than the books in some regards.
Interesting. I found this interesting. What do you think? Just the brutality in general is.
Well, I would have a hard time if I was hired by Hollywood, and I'll go on my sort of what Hollywood should do next, Jack, later. But I would have a really hard time designing a better still suit than I think David Lynch did.
Okay. All right. Have you seen the sci-fi miniseries?
Yes, I have. I don't think Croatian World War II surplus medical scrubs counts as a still suit. It's clearly what their budget afforded them.
Right. Plus, they barely have anything covering their heads. Not that Lynch did either, but...
I mean, look, Lynch lost an opportunity with not having cloaks on them. That would have been great. There was also... I think that they had a sort of a bigger mask than just the still suit hose, right?
Right, yeah. They have... It's like a... almost like a painter's mask that just fits over.
So, I don't think it's perfect by any stretch, but anytime I'm sort of, drawing a sketch of, a Fremen, it goes back to the Lynch outfit.
I find that a lot of artists that do draw Dune stuff, like on DeviantArt and stuff, they do also go back to the Lynch designs quite often. You
can take Paul Pope, who's probably I would say he's probably one of the highest paid comic and commercial artists right now. And all of his Dune stuff really has, it has that Lynch visual language to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would consider him to be, he's really a master at what he does, and he would be a perfect person to sort of, either tell that story in comics or to help a film kind of figure out where to go,
Now, I mean, you mentioned before how they were really putting out like all these kind of books and stuff.
Yeah.
No matter if a film was rated R or not. Was it typical for a movie? Even back then, this movie was kind of not very popular. Was it typical for a toy line to come out for something like this?
Yeah, I mean, in a post-Star Wars world, everything was merchandised. Even to this day, George Lucas has made more money on the merchandise than he ever has on the films.
Right.
So yeah, anything, especially anything sci-fi in the early '80s, it was like, oh, we could have a fraction of Star Wars' market share, and that is $1 billion. So let's absolutely turn this into a toy line. And I'm sure you guys know, David Lynch was under consideration for Return of the Jedi, and I don't think it's any coincidence that his path after he did, was it Elephant Man? His path was bound for sci-fi, whether it was Return of the Jedi or with Dune.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can see that. It still baffles me. I mean, even growing up in that era, I had tons of Star Wars figures, but I don't remember these like really crazy off things. What do you think was going through the designer's mind when they took a look at the characters and how they would design them for kids?
Well, I think there have been some successful uh, reductions. Like RoboCop and Rambo. Those were rated R films that were turned into
Hmm.
cartoons that were turned into really pretty cool toy lines that had a couple waves each and had a life to them. So I'm sure they probably just had a couple movie stills to go on.
Hmm.
That may be part of the reason why Paul is portrayed in his um, Atreides sort of military garb instead of a still suit, or you know, not later offered in a still suit. So they probably only had a handful of images and a script to kind of start the production. It takes, easily 6 months to a year to sculpt and manufacture and ship an action figure. So they would have been out well before any special effects were added, or possibly the principal photography was finished.
Hmm. And I guess that explains why they've got figures of or as play sets for these vehicles that are barely even featured in the film.
Yeah,
I mean, I saw those and I was like, why? I mean, what was the demand for this 2 minute spice harvester?
right.
But I guess they probably saw the pictures and were like, oh, kids will want whatever that does. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's just any toy company back then would have been very smart to just mimic what Kenner was doing with Star Wars, and I think you see it there. You have role play items. You have the starter car blaster and dagger. Um, they just follow the mold of what Star Wars had sort of proven at the marketplace.
right, right. What about like what was the design like back then? Were these kind of basic or kind of what you would expect to come out for a toy line?
Yeah, these are pretty on par with what was available in the marketplace. I think that the head sculpts and the likeness were actually pretty good and pretty advanced for their time. A
Yeah,
lot of the Star Wars do not look like the talent at all. But LJN was sort of making Thundercats and Advanced Dungeon and Dragons, so you see, their big selling point was Battlematic Action, which was a little lever on their back that moved their waist or moved their hands. So Dune inherited this sort of what I guess would be a patented sort of toy mechanism, and so you can kind of make the figures dance by pulling the levers on their back, the same
really.
as Thundercats and yeah, D&D.
I was surprised looking at some of the pictures, the amount of articulation in them. I mean, I expected it to be kind of Star Wars, just shoulder and then legs, but it looks like they can
Yeah.
actually have ball joints in their shoulders.
Yeah, now the Dune figures are a little bit bigger than Star Wars, so they had a bit more real estate to deal with articulation. And LJN really had one of the first predecessors of a modern day ball joint in the shoulder. It's not sort of a complete ball joint. There is some limit to it,
Mm,
but yeah, it's sort of a early precursor of the figures we see now, which have as much or more movement than the human body does.
right, right. Uh, that's really interesting. I see the picture here of Sting as Fade Rutha, and he
Hmm.
has the infamous milking cat as one of his accessories.
Yep.
I think that is just, I don't even know where to go with that. This is
I,
crazy.
we could just write the milking cat off to Lynch. I don't think I do not recall a milking cat ever being in play in any of the books. Um,
Yeah.
we'll give that one to Lynch.
So how many lines did they have? Was it just like one line and it kind of failed, or did they try and keep going with this thing?
Yeah, there was only the initial line, which apparently did not do well in the marketplace. They had two other figures that they had shown in a catalog, which was Gurney Halleck, played by Patrick Stewart, and Lady Jessica, which were never manufactured, as far as I know.
Hmm. Yeah, I see a picture here of the magazine with them in it as well as the other figures that were done.
Yeah.
Uh, Interestingly enough, I mean, since we're on the subject of the the figures that weren't done. I believe you have a prototype for Gurney. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to track down. It's a resin copy of a prototype
Okay.
from a former LJN employee, and it's a prize jewel in my collection for sure. Um, yeah, it's a great figure. I would like to get Lady Jessica as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I have my feelers out there for it.
Nice. Do you have the other figures in the line, or no?
In different stages, yes. I
Okay.
think I still need a Paul Atreides. I'm also multiple, so I can customize them. I want to have Paul in a still suit and Gurney in the Atreides uniform. So, um, you know, I I have bits and pieces floating around.
Yeah. I like the worm. I'd like to pick the worm up at some point. I think
Yeah,
that's just kind of a unique thing to have. It
yeah.
has.
Somebody needs to make one in scale with them. That would be the size of a large dog.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot bigger than what it is. I mean, looking at the pictures now, I realize that it only stands about as tall as them when it's perked up. So
Right.
it's
It's a little maker, I guess.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's talk a little bit more about the like how they were prototyping these guys. I've seen the pictures and it kind of comes apart. Is that typical for a prototype of that age?
Yeah, the at the stage of the sample I have, articulation is not added on yet. That would have been done in a tooling model, which would happen usually in China or Hong Kong.
Hmm.
Uh, so this is the stage of sales and presentation, and this is prior to the factory sort of getting their hands on it and making the cuts and figuring out how the tooling arrangement happens. So it's kind of like a very pure form in the lifespan of a toy. It's the sculpt is done, it's unpainted, it's very raw, and it's before it gets sort of transmogrified into something that moves and is functional.
Hmm. Uh, what looking at seeing at that stage and seeing how they finished them, do you think that they did the process right? Like, did they make a solid figure here, or could they have done things better for the time period?
No, I think they did a great job, especially considering it was not a sophisticated uh, there were not these huge multinational toy companies back then. This is the Wild West of toys, and Kenner was just a tiny little toy company in Ohio, and so yeah, they did as best they could with the sort of technology and things available at the time. And I would argue the prototype I like better than the final product because the articulation they used back then is very ugly. It's not aesthetically pleasing, and it really breaks up the flow and the sculpt of the figure. And
Hmm.
so, I quite like seeing them in that sort of state.
Hmm. Hmm. You're talking here about the what I would almost consider like the golden age of toys, mostly because that
Yeah.
was our age. Do you feel, in general, that more articulation has caused uh, some of the magic to be lost?
Yeah, I know I'm in the minority, but I do think, there there was a turning point really in like the early 2000s, and it's really due to Jesse Falcon, who was at Toy Biz, which was owned by Marvel.
Hmm.
So he really he would regularly take trips to Asia, and he would buy all these Japanese toys, and they were ahead of us in terms of articulation and hiding the seams of joints and all that stuff. And really, Marvel Legends was the first sort of Western toy line to kind of take what they were doing in Asia and really utilize it in a mass market toy line. I think the downside to that is that we lost some of the durability and the pose of figures. You know, like you go back and you look at some of the Iron Men they did, and each finger moves, and that's amazing. You know, that's a technological breakthrough, but that doesn't make for a toy that a kid can sort of throw around the room or can bang against, you know, a villain toy. You know, I guess that's the eternal struggle. It's like, do you have functionality or do you have aesthetics? And at some point, you have to sacrifice one or the other. You know.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I remember back to like you know, even the RoboCop or Aliens and Predator toys. Like they didn't have a lot of articulation to them, but I loved them. I mean, I thought that they were. I would set them up on my shelf and, you know, kind of just stare at them rather than play with them most of the time. But then you know, you look at the toys that they have now. They've got so many joints and stuff. They don't. I don't know. They just don't look real for a matter of sense. Like
Yeah.
my imagination's lost on them because of all the cracks and stuff. But
Yeah, there's a happy medium, but I have a hard time sort of picking out a single toy or a single toy line that achieves that. You know, some of them have certain levels of, you know, that holy trinity, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Well, as we move along here, was this line a success compared to other movie lines, or was it? I mean, it only went one wave, so I guess not really. But considering the movie, was it just kind of did it mediocre, or did it do what they wanted?
I suspect it probably did pretty well in pre-orders, but as soon as the film hit theaters, they would have, you know, clearanced that out pretty quickly.
Hmm. Well, so doing that makes it kind of probably pretty rare. So is that the appeal for a collector today to look at these figures?
You know, it's weird. It's only within the last 5 or 6 years that these secondary market prices on Dune have shot up dramatically. I used to come by them all the time on eBay and at, you know, in secondhand stores, and they would be dirt cheap. There's something in the ether that people are kind of going back now and checking out this line, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't think it's the popularity of Dune. I wish it was. There's something else that is sort of pushing people back into this line, and it's becoming very competitive to get your hand on things at a good price.
Yeah, you know, I took a look at, because like I said, I wanted to get the worm, and I was just the price. I was like, really? Wow. I mean, I wasn't expecting people to be all about these at all.
Yeah, there must be, you know, there are pockets of Fremen of us that are after these toys. It must be.
Huh. Well, you know, you said that you liked the film, and what would you have liked to have seen in the toy line if, you know, you would have had a say in what would have come out?
You know, actually, I think the toy line would have done better to be 3 3/4 inches. You know, to be in scale with Star Wars.
Mhm.
I think you'd need Peter DeVries. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, DeVry.
Right.
I think that's how you say it. I don't know.
You got to have a Brad Dourif figure. Come on. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. All of them. I would want every character, even like Fenrir. Is that the guy that they cut out of the film that was in the book?
Fenrir. Yeah, he's at the very end.
Yeah.
Hasmir Fenring.
Right. He's in the showdown scene.
Right, yeah, but you don't see him anywhere else.
Right. Yeah, like I mean, even though, you know, I don't really. I think the biggest failing of the Lynch film was the Sardaukar, especially now that we've sort of been exposed to what Yarodovsky would have done and Mobius's design for the Sardaukar. It's like the Lynch's Sardaukar are just men in trash bags. It's not. There's no menace whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. No, they look like the radiation cleanup crew, basically. Yeah. That's what they've got going on. Yeah, I agree. I mean, they even have Piter's like plane as a toy. I think that's what it is. One of the ships. it just seems weird that they wouldn't have thought to make his character. So
Yeah. I don't know. And then always, Jack Nance, the constant Lynch bit player, from Twin Peaks and
mhm.
every other, Eraserhead. He plays one of the Harkonnen handmaidens, I guess, and that would be great to have a Jack Nance figure. If I'm saying that, I gotta look that up. I think that's his name.
Jack Nance.
Yeah, that's him. Okay, I got it. Good, good.
Now I see that I mean, you sent me some pictures before we started talking, and
Yep.
you've made some custom Dune figures here.
Yeah. I guess I'll put them up on my Tumblr when this goes live, and we can kind of link people to that. Yeah, I got tired of waiting for 3 3/4 inch Dune figures, so I started to make my own. Um, the the sort of Paul-esque one is very cartoony. It's kind of like I was thinking along the lines of what would Hergé's Tintin and Dune look like together, and how I kind of put that one together. And then the Fade is a bit more realistic because I just found this loose head that really had such great character to it, and it kind of fit perfectly. Like it looks like Sting.
It really does. It really does. I actually, when I saw it, I checked to make sure it just wasn't a repaint of the actual head, because
Yeah,
it does look like him.
I have a Chani I'm finishing up as well, so I'll be sure to share photos of that when it's ready.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, the Paul one almost reminds me of, like, it would be a show called like The Adventures of Moadib or something, a
Yeah,
cartoon. Yeah, I like that. I
I
like
think it could kind of be Leto too as well. Uh, it's kind of it looks like a young sort of
that.
more of a
Yeah,
boy. But Paul was, I mean, they aged him up in the film. He was relatively young in the book, right?
yeah, he was very young in the book. He was I think 15, 16, somewhere 12
Yeah.
maybe. He's very very young at the beginning for sure. Well, of course, I don't think that we can talk about your custom toys without bringing up some action figures coming out soon that have to do with Toy Pizza.
Oh yeah, that's right. We are doing our own toy line, and it's called Knights of the Slice, and it's a loving homage to Takasatsu or Sentai sort of programming from Japan. Which came in Rider and Power Rangers, and a bunch of different properties came out of this genre.
Right.
So we've designed our own, and it's kind of using the motifs of that genre. And you can see we kind of put pizza slices all over the costume, and tried to make our own image of that.
I love it. I think it's great. Having watched the show and seen him kind of go through the designs, it wasn't until this most recent photo that I really caught all of the pizza slices on it. That really stuck out for me. I think it looks great.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we're sort of debating crowdfunding it. We have a great partner who's going to manufacture. But I think we can sort of get the word out in a bigger way by crowdfunding. So we're looking at that campaign now. And if you want more info, you can always check tumblr.toypizza.com or youtube.com/toypizza.
Hmm. Well, I want to thank you for talking about the Dune stuff. Before we go, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the Toy Pizza show. I mean, what can you tell our audience that might get them interested in checking you guys out?
Well, I will do that, but first I have to give you my pitch to Hollywood for what to do with Dune next.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
And I'm the guy to do this. I expect calls any day now from Ian and William Morris and everyone else. So what I would do is I would reboot. Well, I wouldn't say reboot, but I would continue the cinematic Dune universe, and I would actually start at book 2. And I would softly assume Lynch's film was canon. And I say softly because we would sort of take the still suit design and what they established in that film, but really get to the fun part. Because I actually personally consider the second book to be the best book.
Really?
I really do, and I think starting a film with conspirators in a room plotting to kill the emperor is just a great setup, and it automatically lets you data dump and teach the audience everything you need to know about Paul Muad'Dib, and it identifies who the antagonists are very easily, and it's such a great launching board to sort of tell that story, and then you go through the scenes and the themes in the story, and you have your climax be the sort of battle. If I'm remembering this right, it's been a few years since I've read it, but it's Skydal, the face dancer. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Skytail, yeah.
Skytail, yeah. So you have him sort of holding the Atreides babies hostage with a knife, and you have Paul, who's now blind, and we see Paul project his consciousness into the baby. He knows where to throw his knife, or how, I'm paraphrasing here, and he kills Skydal, and that's the sort of climax of the movie. But there is a easily digestible film in the second book. I think the only hope for the first book is really an HBO series, and I don't know how likely that is. I think that in some respects the sci-fi films may have tarnished Hollywood's understanding of the marketability of Dune, and I don't think that's entirely fair. So I think that we all know about Peter Berg's plan to sort of trim the first book down into this tight action film, and maybe it worked, maybe it wouldn't have. But I would say, the first film, unfortunately, however much we love the long-windedness of it and the level of detail, that's a lot of baggage for a modern-day film audience. There's a lot of setup. It is a nuanced, long-spanning film.
Yeah.
If you start at the second film, everything is in place within that first scene. You know who the main character is. You know who are plotting to kill him. You have your story arc. You have your stakes, and it's all laid out in the first, that first scene.
Yeah.
And
Very Shakespearean.
Yeah, it's totally doable. It is. I see it already in my head as a screenplay, and I'm ready to write it. So.
That's interesting. When we talk about it on the show, we get a lot of questions about, will this be back at film? My standpoint is that it should be an HBO, AMC production. I think that's like the only way to really do, especially the first film, correctly, is do like a long kind of 12 episode deal to just do the one book.
Right.
But no one has ever approached the angle of starting with Dune Messiah, and I think that's really interesting. We just earlier this week recorded our review of Dune Messiah, and it's probably my least favorite book.
Interesting. Okay.
But I do agree with you that it would make a more interesting film, and I think it's just because the dialogue could be a lot more expressive with facial expressions and stuff in that book. I mean, I think that the weight could come through a lot more easier than Dune or God Emperor of Dune. I mean, Children of Dune, I think you could do all right on television or film, but that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, just picture it in your head. The film opens up. You have this princess who wants to marry her husband. You have the navigators, who are these mutated humans. You have Skytel, this changeling, and they're all in a room, and they're all plotting to kill the God Emperor of the universe. Like, that's compelling.
It is. It is. I had a really honest. I hadn't looked at it that way, and I think that that's a really great way to look at it. I'll definitely bring that up in the main show too, probably, because that's cool. That's cool. I will tell you that when we talked to Brian, he said that they are discussing movie or TV rights. He couldn't tell us what, but they're in talks with someone. So.
No, look. The reality. I've been fortunate enough to work on several film properties and several television properties in a small way. Whether it was the licensing for Lord of the Rings at New Line, or Twilight, or Hunger Games, or even Walking Dead, and I had a very small role in some of the merchandise for Walking Dead.
Oh wow.
So, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to the Hollywood machine and how these companies work, and Dune will always be optioned. There's always going to be studios and networks taking an option out on them. But the reality is, I don't think there's a way to crack book one for today's audience who consumes Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and Breaking Bad and things like that. I don't think there's a way without gutting what's great about the book to do it.
Yeah, yeah. It would definitely be extremely difficult. I agree. It's hard to imagine a world where they could do it right and please everybody. So I don't know if I would take the standing that you did with Lynch's being correct, because I find so many off things, especially the rain at the end. I mean, I like the designs, but I don't know about the story.
Yeah, I'm curious if the rain was, Lynch's machination, or, he always says that he was locked out of the editing room and things like that. I don't know that his pure vision would have been any better. The rain feels very Hollywood ending to me. I don't know if it was in his original script or not, because really the terraforming comes about, in God Emperor? It's centuries, right?
Yeah, it takes over 3,000 years. Yeah.
So I digress there. To answer your question about Toy Pizza, if anything me and you have talked about is remotely interesting, I think your audience would dig Toy Pizza. We try to sort of cover all of these stories. The Gurney Halleck prototype, that was a great story. Most people had never knew it existed. So we try to uncover stuff like that. We try to talk about modern day toys and collectibles, and I would argue it is the best looking content on YouTube for toys.
I would say I agree with you there. I just stumbled across it by chance. I don't even remember why, and I went back and watched the entire catalog. It was probably about a month and a half ago, a month or so ago. And you recently changed your format to, you were doing like a 10-ish minute shows, and now it's like an hour, right?
Yeah, that's true. Part of the reason is we thought it was going to be less work. It's turned out not to be, because we're perfectionists, and especially our editor, Nikki Fung, he just wants to add more and more footage, and it looks great, but it is, we all work full-time jobs. I run a company, and they are employees of Frederator, and we thought the long form would allow us to go more in depth and would be less work because we don't have any edits. It's just boom, it's one chunk, and you do it. The other reason, YouTube favors longer content. They'll spice melange on YouTube that drives who your videos get served up to, how much revenue you make. There's all it's controlled by the Space Guild, no doubt about it. So part of that, this year they're very into long form content. They want longer videos. They want to put more ads on videos, and so they're favoring those in search results. And we want to be the best at YouTube, so we are pivoting to what the overlords want to see, and that's part of the reason for the long form.
I do remember now what turned me on to you guys. It was Vsauce 3. I think Jake mentioned
yeah. Well,
in an episode.
Jake and Kevin and all them have been amazing to us. Jake has, we have grown to 18,000 subscribers in 9 months, and our 2 biggest bursts were because Jake mentioned us. He's been amazing, and we're actually working on official collaborations for Vsauce 2 and 3, hopefully before the end of the year. So that should be amazing.
Oh wow, very, very cool, very cool. Just some closing things here. This will probably go up after New York Comic Con, but I'm hoping to see you there. That should be a big event.
We're gonna post our locations on Instagram when we're at the show, so hopefully we can chat. That'd be great.
Very cool. Very cool. And I want one of those pins, man. So
Oh
I'm
yeah,
coming for you.
I'll put it back to you. No question about it.
Cool, sweet. Well, thanks again, Jesse, for coming on the show and talking Dune and toys in general. Toy Pizza on YouTube is the place to find more Jesse. I'll put links to his Tumblr and some of his other stuff in the show notes at dunesagapodcast.com. So, if you'd like to be a part of the show and the conversation, you can always join us live at dunesagapodcast.com/live, or you can email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com and be a part of our listener feedback show that we put up every month. We love to hear what you're saying and reply. And if you have any questions for Jesse, please pass them along our way, and we will get them to him and get a response from him if you want to hear something about the toys that we didn't talk about. So once again, for the Dune Saga podcast, and a big thank you to Jesse DeStasio, I'm David Moulton, and may Shai Hulud clear the path before you. Cool, very cool.
Thank you so much. What a great time.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm really glad that you were into it, because this has been great. And I was trying to find a way to talk about it, and it was very difficult to really find the right kind of angle, because I like toys and I collect to a degree, but I'm not educated about them, So
Sure.
yeah.
Well, cool. Look, I'll be your toy correspondent whenever you have a question.
Great, awesome. Yeah, this is good. Well, hopefully I'll see you next weekend. We can connect at some point and say hi.
Cool.
I'm really looking forward to it. This is my 5th year going, so
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, and thanks for having me on. And yeah, let's coordinate to meet up next week.
cool. Thanks. Have a good day.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye.